Okay, welcome to Into the Channel, a podcast primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, come kick it with us. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen at ITC_pod on X. I am your host, Dino Cespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. I think this was another weekend of just amazing football all around the world. Mm-hmm. And it really just feels like an embarrassment of riches at this point.
I mean, who's got it better than us?
Oh, boy. Wow. I guess we can be a podcast that quotes Jim Harbaugh. That's fine.
I didn't know that was a Harbaugh quote. He didn't make that up, did he?
That's like a Harbaugh family thing. I mean, I feel great shame that I even know this. Yeah, I saw it on Real Sports. Like his old man, who's like basically exactly like Jim Harbaugh, just 40 years in the past, used to say that to Jim and John. He used to say, "Who has it better than us?" And they would both go, "Nobody."
Well, got some bad news for the Harbaughs. We've got it better than they do.
That's right. Certainly. I mean, he has to go coach the San Diego, Los Angeles, Anaheim County Chargers or whatever they are at this point.
Yeah, we might have a bigger audience than the Chargers at this point, so I'm not too bummed about that.
Feels like it. Oh, we doing that?
Yeah, we're gonna celebrate a bit this week.
Look at you! I'll crack mine as well, then, my good man. What are you drinking over there?
We are celebrating with a little victory, Golden Monkey Triple Ale from Downingtown, PA. Let's fucking go!
Look at that! I love it.
Quite tasty.
Excellent.
Mystical flavors, according to the can, and no disagreement from your boy.
Pennsylvania beers, underrated beers, I could say, as a person who used to live in the Midwest. So good culture down there.
I like it. And you? What do you got going over there?
Oh, so just so the audience knows what an absolute clown I am, not for drinking this beer, I do not drink beers that I could not credibly bicycle to the brewery because I live in beautiful Seattle, Washington. So this is actually a mashup of two excellent breweries out here. One, Metier Brewing, right down the block, and another, Rubens Brews, a little further north of here. Ombili IPA, which is a word for peace and reconciliation, which I think, sometimes that could fit in football. And I also think it's going to fit loosely into the episode that we have cooking today. And so without further ado, the Week 4 NWSL tiers, they have a little bit of a theme to them. And I mentioned this delicious beer I'm drinking. It's named for a word for peace and reconciliation. That is actually counter to what we're talking about this week. We're talking about beef. What is beef? Some great philosophers have asked in the past. And so before we examine exactly what's beef, we'll leave that to the great scholars of our days. But when I think there is a conflict or a beef, people say a lot of things. Sometimes they say things they don't mean in an effort to be hurtful. Not a good practice, in my opinion. Mm-mm. Sometimes they weaponize a hard truth in the heat of the moment. Sometimes they say things just to encourage themselves or to make themselves feel better about their current situation. But in any of those situations, I think the overarching feeling people have is that they don't want to be punked. They want to feel like everyone around them has an accurate picture of what's going on. So with that in mind, let's get to the first tier. We talked about last week, we don't want the bottom tier to be pejorative, but that's just what we got to call it. So we're calling this tier started from the bottom, now we're still here. So look, life isn't just a bowl of cherries. You're going to face some adversity from time to time. Things are not going super great for these clubs right now, but that doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever. So we're starting with the expansion franchise, the Utah Royals. They suffered a loss this week at home to your Orlando Pride. Utah only managed 5 shots. The consolation, I guess, is that they were all on target, so that's good. But still, they have Sentnor, who's a real player, but most expansion teams are going to need some time. And I think it's reasonable to believe the same for Utah. So they're started from the bottom, quite literally.
Yep, still here. In the game against Orlando, NWSL Plus flashed a funny graphic that said, this was around the 58th minute, that the XG advantage was Orlando 1.42, Utah 0.09.
There we go.
A little tough to compete when you're swimming around those waters. I kind of do like watching this Utah side, though. There was a funny play from Ali Sentnor. Well, I mean, it could have been pretty serious. Speaking of beef, she took a kick square to the face. This was maybe 75, 80 yards away from goal. And she was like, I'm going to just run through this kick. I don't care. I think I've got to look at goal here. 3/4 of the way in the wrong direction away from goal. And then she was like, wait, let me slow it up and actually get a whistle here from the ref. Like, I thought better of it, but she was like ready to go. She continues to be really impressive. 2 goals in 4 matches, 9 shots total, 7 on target. Her ceiling, crazy high still, just turned 20 years old.
Yep.
She just has like franchise cornerstone written all over her.
Totally agree. No slight to her, but I think we could. Oh, I'll make a little bit of a prediction. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Utah kind of hovering around these bottom tiers through the season, but you never know. The inputs in the algorithm could change any week, so we'll see about that. Next, we have the Houston Dash. They play in the home of the wise and legendary record executive Jay Prince, who nobody on this podcast will ever disrespect or question. I just want to get that out of the way right now. Jay Prince, it is only respect. I'm sorry that we have to discuss your Houston Dash in this light. We mean no harm. Please don't hurt us. The Houston Dasher is still in a bit of a building phase. They, what's a good word for it? Dashed out to a 1-0 lead in their last match versus the Washington Spirit, but they ended up losing 3-1 at home. And then on the heels of that, Jeff Kassoff of ESPN reported on Sunday that Maria Sanchez has requested a trade from the club. Maybe that's beef, but it's also...
Sounds like it.
For sure, it's not good.
It's not beef, let me tell you. Houston, they're struggling against Washington. 9 shots, just 1 on target. Pretty paltry there. They're also bottom 3 shot creating actions and shots on target. They're 11th in total shots, just 4 goals on the season. They did grab a win. So like with regards to the standings, they're not fully out of it. But I mean, I think very well deserved for them to be in that started from the bottom. Now we're still here tier.
Fair enough. Let's go to the next tier. Let's call this tier, I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA.
Love it.
These clubs, they have pedigree. They have talent. One club in particular is here on the strength of those two things. But if they don't sharpen up fast, they might be looking at the bottom level of the tiers very soon. And that is, of course, the Portland Thorns. Yep, that was a 2-0 away loss to the North Carolina Courage. And then North Carolina Courage has looked pretty good this year. There was a cross-country flight from Portland to North Carolina, sure. But the Thorns have played 4 matches, and they have a single point to their name. With the roster they have, they're just going to have to find a way to hold the ball a little more, which I thought was a significant problem in the first half against North Carolina. And they're going to need to start getting some wins expeditiously.
Yeah, they're currently league worst, 10 goals allowed. Yep. The only thing I could think about, obviously, pretty tough schedule too, at KC, at Houston. They had the home loss to Gotham, but then a home draw to Louisville. Like that, I mean, at some point, you got to try to get things back on track. The one thing I think you can think about is a lot of players with big international duty. Sophie Smith, Sam Coffey, Olivia Moultrie, she's in camp. Janine Becky and Jessie Fleming for Canada. Even Hina Sugita also participated, she believes. So, maybe a little bit of a wear and tear early in the season.
Yeah.
But even still, things seem pretty off in Portland as well. You mentioned just that 1 point after 4 matches, and they also have the second worst goal differential in the league, just ahead of the Houston Dash, who's sitting at -5. Portland's at -4. They're being productive from a shot standpoint. It's just the defense seems to be very, very leaky.
Yeah.
They're just in a rut at this point, but I think we do expect them to possibly turn it around, especially considering all the talent they've got on the roster.
For sure. They have some benefit of the doubt, but you don't get points on the table for that.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have Gotham FC. The Bats held the ball for over 60% of the course of their match during the Kansas City Current, and they battled back for a home draw after Temwa Chawinga scored in the 17th minute. Let's also keep in mind that Gotham brought on Jenna Neiswanger, Crystal Dunn, and Lynn Williams in the second half. So I think you and I agree on Kansas City. They're extremely good. But if you're the reigning champs in Gotham, you want to try to win these home matches. And they were never really able to create the big second chance in the second half that I thought they really needed, especially when KC was inexplicably leaving Esther unmarked on corner kicks. So, is a draw a good result against Kansas City? I think so. But if you're the reigning champs and you're at home, hard to be satisfied with it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, something definitely seems off with Gotham as well. It's kind of weird. I mean, I think there's not a lot of rhyme or reason. We'll get to some of these other teams as well. But one thing that I think has been pretty apparent is the talent on the roster has not been a very good predictor. If we think about feeding data into some algorithm, that has not been a good predictor. I think we're seeing a lot of variance with regard to, these teams, a lot of talent, a lot of recognizable names, not a lot of production, and maybe not a lot of positive outcomes. I think Gotham falls squarely in that camp. The other thing too is they just haven't looked good.
Yes.
It's one thing to look good and not put the ball in the net for whatever reason. They just have looked a little bit out of sorts. So we talked about Portland, a lot of players with international duty. I think you could say the same about Gotham, Tierna Davidson, Emily Sonnet, Esther Gonzalez, Nicewanger, Crystal Dunn. They're obviously battling the Midge Purse injury. Lynn Williams working her way back. So, I mean, when you've got the roster in that much flux, even if it's not tired legs, it's just, all right, people are here and people are not here. Now we're like just sort of trying to figure out how to practice and how to kind of like run sets and figure out what we're going to do. So I would probably expect them to kind of get into a better rhythm.
Yeah, it's good. That's a great point. Yeah, Gotham, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw. It's early. They got that loyalty. They got that royalty. So, that's why we're giving them the benefit of the doubt not being on the bottom tier right now, but we'll see how it goes. Next, we have Angel City FC. They were able to notch a 1-0 away victory over the Chicago Red Stars, where they dominated possession in the first half, but only had about 43% of the ball in the second half. They used an own goal from German defender Maxi Rahl in the first half to win the match. But this team just needs to start scoring, frankly. I think they have the personnel to do it, and they just haven't shown it yet.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower on this Angel City team. I think, I don't know, you could make a case that they could be 1 tier down. I think they've been very uninspiring. Talked last week about just kind of like the roster makeup, a couple of super young players and more experienced players, a little bit older players, maybe less dynamic, I think, at this point. And I think it's showing on the field. That win over Chicago, great to get a win like that on the road, but no Mallory Swanson in that one.
Right.
Required kind of an own goal to make that one work. Something telling me that I shouldn't be too surprised if we don't see Angel City make the final 8, make the playoffs this season.
I think that's why I'm partially reserving my judgment. And I think they fit into this Kendrick Lamar line because they got that royalty in their DNA. And maybe I'm falling for some of the marketing and that they were able to kind of come into the league and make the playoffs last year. But yeah, we'll see how they go. This was an easy decision for your boy. I mean, they talk about the logo up here in Seattle Reign FC. The Queen is back. The Queen logo has returned to the franchise. So obviously they're in this royalty tier. But I'll tell you, as we sit here today, it looks like this team might have a hard time scoring goals. But again, when we talk about the DNA of this club, you can't forget their pedigree. I like the look of the defense, and the coaching is going to be on point. I do think the attacking, like I said, is going to need some more time. And I think if you have an optimistic view, it might only be a matter of time before Ji So-yun, Bethany Balser, Veronica Latsko, and Jordan Heitema start to build some real chemistry. And I think the other thing you could hang your hat on if you were a Seattle Reign supporter, I can't think of anybody in particular, but what that person might hang their hat on is that this team looked like your basic mid-table team through a big stretch of last season, and they ended up playing in the final.
I think Seattle has looked good in stretches. Obviously, like they've been in these games, but from a results standpoint, obviously 3 straight losses. You don't want to see that. This is probably going to be a team on the edge of the playoff hunt. Even I think those 4 players that you mentioned, even if we do see them get cooking, the league is so deep, man. Like there's just so many good teams, and like there's just no gimmies. I mean, there are barely gimmies on the schedule. I mean, we just watched Utah, we watched Houston. Obviously, these aren't the best teams in the league, but you've got to go in there and beat them, even considering any kind of talent disparity. Got to feel good for those fans to see Quinn out there, to see Alana Cook out there, affecting the game. And I think. We've talked about it's a long season. There's enough there to still feel pretty hopeful about, the prospects for this Reign side.
Yeah, and if I should ever encounter any Reign fans, I will let them know to be hopeful.
Yeah, pass that along for me.
Next, we have our 3rd tier from the bottom. To quote the great Brooklyn-based poet Sean Carter, "We don't believe you. You need more people." Jay-Z penned this line as a way to accuse Nas of lying about his life and his raps. I am using it as a way to say that I'm impressed by the start of these clubs, but I'm not a full believer just yet. Mm-hmm. So let's get into it. First one, Racing Louisville. 4 matches, 4 draws. Their latest was against NWSL Shield holders San Diego Wave. When it comes to Louisville, I like Jalen Howell. I like Savannah DeMello. I like Taylor Flint. I like Uchenna Kanu. And I like Adi Borges. What's not to like about those players? But I don't like this strategy of drawing every single match you play. I think they have a good squad. I think Racing could probably make the playoffs, but I want to see them start winning some matches before I feel comfortable describing them as a full-fledged playoff team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I will say it again, though. It's tough to get results, and at some point you look at these results that they're getting and you be like, all right, well, this team is not, we can't ignore this team. I think they're at that stage. Like, we don't expect them to win the league, but I think, a player like Adi Borges, like, to get her back, I think she logged like 10 or 15 minutes this last match against San Diego. You expect the arrow to kind of be pointing up with her return. So we'll see. And you mentioned Uchenna Kanu, like, leading the league, goal scored this season.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's at one point she was 3 shots on target, 3 goals. It's just a fun stat line. And I agree with you. I thought DeMello was particularly solid. He had a strong game against San Diego, which they needed, because I think she kind of connects a lot of stuff that they're trying to do. I don't know. I like this Racing team. I think they're going to be sniffing around. They strike me as the kind of team that's going to get a couple shock results before the season's up.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to put it. Next, the Chicago Red Stars. So it is important, and you mentioned it earlier, Mal Swanson did not appear in their 1-0 home loss to Angel City. So I'm not going to draw like a ton of sweeping conclusions about Chicago here. I thought Sam Staub looked great in this match. She was keeping the defense organized, and she was playing passes forward into dangerous areas. Allison Schlegel could have had a goal from a brilliant Staub pass, but she was ruled offside. I liked what I saw from Jenna Bike as well, but I think, we have to contend with this. I know they got Lauren Donaldson. I know they have Mal Swanson back. They added Sam Staub. This team finished bottom of the table last year, and I reserve the right to be lukewarm on them until we get deeper in the season. And even with that said, I consider myself lukewarm, and I have them on the 3rd tier. So it's not like I think they're a bad team. I don't know if I believe what I'm seeing just yet. I
think I agree with you with one caveat. And this might be where we start our own internal beef on the show here. I think Mallory Swanson has MVP type ceiling.
Oh yeah.
And I think if she's in that form, it was just such a difference not seeing her against Angel City. And seeing what the offense looked like, seeing what the whole flow looked like. I mean, she's just such an engine. If she has like a monster type season where she's playing, 90-95% of the matches, I mean, she's already at such a high level that I think she can kind of single-handedly carry this team into like the top 3, top 4. I think defensively they're pretty solid. Obviously, Alyssa Nair found her form as well this past summer, and kind of think has been able to take that into the season. Obviously, she was freaking turnstile last season, so that's in the past.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Got that out of her system.
Wow.
So I don't know. I think I'm a little warm. I think I'm a little warmer on this team, all hinging on maybe Swanson having another MVP type season.
Fair enough. Totally understand. All right, next tier, the 2nd tier here.
Let's go.
This is a recent line. You laugh until you get hit with my official jab. Great Miami-based poet Ricky Rose threw out this line just in the last few days. And I kind of like it as a way of saying, you can play with me if you want, but you're not going to like it when I go right at you. I feel like that's what Rick Ross, the boss, was saying in that line. And that's kind of how I feel about these clubs as well. So let's get it started. First, North Carolina Courage. This team was in the, quote, I want to believe tier just last episode. But after a 2-0 win at home over the Portland Thorns, where they jumped out to an early lead, made it 2-0 in the 35th minute, and then saw the game out for the remaining 55 minutes, I think other clubs need to recognize that the Courage is not just going to go away because of Ketterlene's injury. I think they're really good. I think they're really organized. And I think I'm starting to be less skeptical that they could sustain this.
I agree. I mean, I think they're really good.
Yeah.
Again, just 4 matches in, they've had 7 different players score a goal.
I'm saying, man.
There's only one other team who has eclipsed 7 goals this season. That's the Kansas City Current. To have 7 different goal scorers, that's tremendous. Defensively, they're also flying. They lead the league in XG allowed as well as actual G allowed, both right around 3, again, in 4 matches. I like what they're doing. I like the way they play. Like, they've got attitude. They've got a swag, especially when they're at home. The Ketterlene injury is like obviously a devastator, but I mean, there might have been some kind of galvanizing effect as a result of that, just with people maybe writing them off and then being like, okay, we'll see. I really like what they've got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashley Sanchez, Denise O'Sullivan, Casey Murphy in goal. They got real players over there. So, yeah, I mean, imagine how great they would be with Ketterlene, but, well, we don't have to worry about that right now because they're playing great as it stands. Next, San Diego Wave. Obviously, no Gurma in this one for San Diego, and manager Casey Stoney took out Jaden Shaw in the 59th minute. She took out Alex Morgan in the 66th minute, hopefully, and I would imagine to kind of protect them after their participation in the She Believes Cup. And they walked away from that match against Louisville with a draw because that's all anybody walks away with when they play Louisville, apparently. I will say, man, 33-year-old Swedish legend Sofia Jakobsen is playing great so far in this young season.
Oh, yeah.
She's been a problem for every defense that she's lined up against. The Savannah McCaskill edition, that seems to have worked out very nicely. She really fits in the roster. And if I may be so bold, and no disrespect to the legend Alyssa Nair, I think Kaylin Sheridan might be the best goalkeeper in the league. And so it's not breaking news to anybody that they won the Shield last season. I think they're hunting for the whole league this year. I mean, obviously playoffs are a different animal, but I think you might laugh at San Diego, but you won't like it when you get hit with their official jab.
I agree with you on Sheridan. I mean, she's playing really, really well at the moment. San Diego, though, I'm not sure how I feel about them in the second tier, to be honest. A couple stats I want to throw your way. 14 shots, only 2 on target against Louisville. And that's emblematic of their season as a whole. So they're dead last in shots on target percentage this season. Again, just 2 goals in 3 matches. I think there's just a little bit of a connectivity missing with San Diego. And obviously I swing wildly on how I feel about, the legend Alex Morgan. And I just kind of feel like there's a weird offensive gravity to her. And I think it hurts the team a little bit. She obviously has a role to play, but obviously it's different than peak prime Alex Morgan. It could be just my eyes playing tricks on me. And I think we could look up in a few weeks' time and see this team in the absolute top tier. But from what we've seen so far, they don't look like a top tier team. They don't look kind of on the level, I think, from what we've seen. When you think about a Kansas City or even in North Carolina, I think we've seen at least 2 or 3 teams that I think are better than them so far. Obviously, it's still super early. And I agree about McCaskill. Looks tremendous, but I think, she definitely tired legs late in that one. You can kind of see her,
yeah, a little bit.
See her wheezing through the last 15, 20 of that one. But I don't think San Diego, I wouldn't be shocked if they finish outside the top 3 or 4 this season.
Okay, that's a bold take. And I always admit to caveman brain, I look at the names on the roster and I'm just like, I think this is a really good team. And it's gonna take me and my algorithm a while to change that opinion, I think.
I think that's the story of the season, though. Like, it's like you can't just look at that roster. I mean, like North Carolina, they've got some players, but they're not at the same level of some of these other squads in terms of like names that pop off the screen, but they just play such a great brand of football. So I think that could be a little bit of fool's gold this season. We'll see if it's just an early season blip or if that's more of a trend.
That's a great point. And fool's gold, wearing fake jewelry, that just sets you up perfectly for the reaction diss from the other rappers. So you got to be careful with that. You don't need people telling you that your jewels are fake. I know Alex Morgan doesn't have that problem because she is rich. But anyway, I digress. Next team on the tier. I think you'll appreciate this one a little bit more. The Orlando Pride, currently sitting 5th in the table after a 1-0 away victory over those Utah Royals. And Zambian superstar Barbara Banda was greeted with a hero's welcome at the Orlando airport. In the match, though, on the pitch, Marta continues to turn back the clock. And other teams are apparently still rolling with the strategy of not closely marking her or staying touch tight, if you will, inside the 18. So if that keeps happening, and then you add Banda to the mix, I think your prediction of this squad making the final is very much in play.
This team, watching them play, they are like screaming for like a number 9. I mean, up front against Utah, they start Allie Watt and Julie Doyle. And I think when you think about swapping, I mean, no shade at those players, but you think about just putting Banda up there and like, just moving some pieces around and like making her the focal point. It's freaking night and day. I mean, I got goosebumps seeing her get that hero's greeting at the Orlando airport. I'm just excited. I mean, I think the team construction is such that, and obviously we lose Messiah Brighto in the offseason, and I think like that hurt because you just look at that roster and you're like, okay, wow, like there's just a big number 9 size hole right up front. And to get Banda, I mean, just so pumped. So Orlando's 5th in the standings, firmly in the playoff mix, still undefeated, never lost on the season. Just one win though in 4 tries, but I just love the way they play. I think this has very high ceiling. Doesn't mean that we also have a high floor. I think the floor could still be, like maybe mid-tier, maybe like, bottom of the playoff mix. We'll see. I do expect them to make the playoffs, but I think the ceiling, though, if things work out, I think is pretty high.
Look at you. What an Arsenal fan trying to set the expectations low. If this team is at the bottom of the playoff mix, I will be shocked. I think this team is going to challenge for top four. I think they're going to be right in the mix all year.
I'm glad you called me out for it, but that's not an Arsenal thing. It's probably more of a Miami Heat thing. As we enter the NBA
fair.
playoffs and Miami Heat are in the play-in against the Sixers, we'll see. I mean, I gotta keep hope, but obviously, we have to do this every year. Oh, we'll talk about that one later. Podcast primarily about women's football. Let's get back to it.
Yes, and coincidentally, look how this worked out. It's almost like we produced these things on Friday, prime time. Your Orlando Pride take on the San Diego Wave in Orlando. I'm very, very much looking forward to watching that football game. But let's move ahead to the last team on the second tier. I think folks might be in for a bit of a surprise, but if you haven't seen them yet, they had to be on one of these tiers. I'm going with Bay FC. They have a road win over Angel City in the season opener. They lost at Washington, D.C. to the Spirit. No shame in that. They lost a heartbreaker to Houston, which was surprising, but it's not devastating. And then they notch a home win over the Seattle Reign. And the combo of Kundanaji and Oshuala looks dangerous. Who could have seen that coming? So I don't think I'm going out on a limb, but I need you as this checks and balance for what I'm doing here. I just want to say it. In the words of Bill Simmons, I'm just going to say it. This team is making the playoffs.
They're definitely making the playoffs.
100%.
Looking at, this is a funny stat. Looking at total shots, all right? We're going to go through the top four teams. I'm going to go 4-1. So Angel City's mustered 56 shots. Third place, my Orlando Pride, 57 shots. Kansas City Current, 58 shots. Bay FC, 77 shots.
Okay, let's go.
They're 19 ahead of the second place KC Current against your Seattle Reign. They managed 23 shots, 7 on target. You had been calling for it, Oshuala Kundanaji. Let's get them to play together. And I think, you saw it up close. They attract so much attention. You know, like on one of the goals, I think a couple of them came off corners for Bay FC. Kundanaji and Oshuala, they're kind of like fading back, trying to see if something bounces their way. And the defenders are just, even when they're marking somebody else, like it's just gravity that just pulls them closer to an Oshuala, to a Kundanaji. And then you see things open up all over the field, especially like in that danger area. And they haven't even really figured out the chemistry yet between the two of them. No. They're just running around out there. Like, it kind of reminds me of those early Heat teams, Wade and LeBron, just kind of like, they're so good. They're just running around and good stuff's happening. That seems to be what's happening at Bay FC. So when they get it together, they get on the same page, they figure out their rhythm, a little give and go action, little head nod to kind of like, get something started. That's going to be very scary. So I very much expect this team to be a legit threat in the playoff mix.
I'm glad to hear you say that. And I'm also glad that you pointed out that I did mention on last week's episode that their manager, Albertine Montoya, should play Oshuala and Kundanaji at the same time. And then when I saw the starting lineup announced against the Seattle Reign, I was like, could have waited 1 week to do that. But you know what? That's okay. Unbiased journalism here. I think they're going to be really fucking good. And so I think if you're going to underestimate them because they're an expansion team, do it at your own peril. Because like you said, they're ripping shots on goal. And that's the only way you can score is if you're ripping shots. So I like their chances. Let's get to the final tier, the top tier. And of course, if we're talking about the top tier, then you could only quote the world's greatest poet, Brooklyn-born Christopher Wallace, the legendary Brooklyn MC, Notorious B.I.G., vividly described how he struck fear in the hearts of his enemies using the line, quote, "I can hear sweat trickling down your cheek." And I think these two clubs have the exact same effect on their opponents. Mm-hmm. They just look at you cross and you see yourself in their crosshairs and you should be sweating. So let's start with them. In the nation's capital, the Washington Spirit. Do you want players with U.S. women's national team experience like Trinity Rodman, Andy Sullivan, Casey Kruger, and Ashley Hatch? Okay, you got them. Do you want a certified international star like Lacey Santos on her way? Okay, you got that. Do you want young guns who are looking to prove themselves and have proven pedigree like Croy Bethune and Hal Hirschfeld? Yeah, you got all that on the Washington Spirit on one roster. I picked them to make the final. I think you picked them to win the Shield. And I think both of those predictions are looking pretty damn strong right now. I don't think the Spirit, they gave up that early goal to Utah. I don't think they ever looked like they were under any kind of real significant pressure. And they just come back and score a 3-1 resounding victory. And so I think this is a top tier team. And I think people should be afraid. They should be very afraid.
100% agree. I think Trinity Rodman, Corey Bethune, and Ulimata Sarr up front are just, talk about in rhythm. They're in a really nice rhythm. Yeah. Offensively, they're just so potent. And I think also, not just defensively, but like up and down the field, they look super organized. And the talent on the roster, this is the one exception to, all right, is talent a good predictor? In the case of the Spirit, absolutely is a good predictor because rock solid. Like they're in kind of like mid-season to late season form already. Obviously, Hidalgo's coming in. That's going to be interesting. Lacey Santos yet to log a minute, but I mean, when you've got Bethune and Hirschfeld just playing like vets already, it's pretty wild to see. I think Corey Bethune actually, her ceiling, even with all the talent on this roster, I think her ceiling is she could be the best player on this team.
Oh, that's spicy.
When she hits her prime, I think she's got the skill set. She could just do everything. She could do everything. She's older than Trinity Rodman, which is funny. She's 23. Trinity Rodman's 21.
Yeah.
But Bethune's just really fucking good and really creative and really fast twitch, really high IQ, like the exact player that I love watching.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, Bethune looks great. I think we talked about a couple episodes. She did an interview, a post-match interview too, where she like shouted out the vets and then talked about like, we know who we are and we just got to play to our identity. I was just like, okay, major green flags here. I think it's important to shout out on Bethune's goal. Great pass, great cross from Gabby Carl, who was also impressive in the She Believes Cup, 25-year-old defender out of Canada. So, I mean, they just got a lot of good players on the team. I didn't even mention Geraldes, so I'm glad you brought him up. I don't know. Does he have any experience working with a squad that has a lot of good players on it? I think so. So they probably should be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll check his Wikipedia and just do a little deep dive there. Yeah, Gabby Carlos too. She's been on one since the Gold Cup. I mean, She's just playing really good ball. That's a player, any team I think would love to have.
All day. At right back, premium position, too, to have somebody who you can just count on. I mean, we talk a lot about Emily Fox playing for U.S. Women's National Team and your Gunners. Just being able to pencil in that right back is so huge. Mm-hmm. Let's get to the final team, top tier. They remain there. They were at the top of the tiers last week. The Kansas City Current. Now, I do understand that it was a draw in this last week's match, but this isn't too reactive. There is a science to this. There is a method to this. So let's just look at it through this. Yeah, it was only a draw, but they walked into Gotham's emotional home opener where fans were celebrating the Bats' triumphant NWSL championship last year. And Kansas City didn't care. I have a question for you. Is it possible that the combination of Bia Zanerato and Temwa Chewinga might be better than we initially expected?
Without a doubt, it's better. I mean,
it's awesome.
I mean, let's take it up a notch, as I like to do.
Yes.
Is there a pairing that's better offensively? Like, I think there is no defense when those two are executing that can stop that attack. You're really just counting on them missing. Either Bia missing the pass or Temwa missing the pass or Temwa just kind of like skying it. Because when they are on point, like, I know we're not supposed to key in on Chewinga's speed. Shout out to our guy Vlaco, but holy hell, that run that she had! I mean, she looked like the only thing I can compare it to is like maybe seeing Usain Bolt stumble out of the gate and then just be like, no biggie, I'm going to run everybody down, just blow past them. That was unbelievable. But then obviously she's still got to finish from there. Those two, there's no defending those two. When they are on, it's a wrap. Like they're scoring. That's it. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win the league or, kind of blow through the playoffs, but it just is what it is. Like those are the scariest two that we have, I think, in this league.
I like it. I mean, we talk about Kundanaji and Oshwala. I think there is probably a little bit more with Chewinga and Bia to where they're also going to be able to provide really great service for each other too. So they might have a slight edge over Kundanaji and Oshwala. I mean, we've talked about, I cannot wait to see Julie Doyle play with Bonda because I think Julie Doyle is just going to be feeding crosses in there all day and just letting Bonda do the work. But yeah, that Chewinga goal where she just hits the turbo and starts flying past everybody on the pitch. I tweeted about it from the ITC Twitter account at ITC_pod if you're into that kind of thing. That the only thing that mattered in that moment, and Bia knew it because it was a foregone conclusion that Chewinga was getting by everybody. That's a done deal. But the only thing was just Bia was like, I just got to get the weight of the pass right. And what do you know? The Brazilian great Bia, she got the weight of the pass right.
Exactly right. It's a great call out to kind of like put Oshuala Kundanage up against these two. But when you look at the stats this season for both Chewinga and Bia, 2 goals, 2 assists for each. So you also get the playmaking. And I think like we might see Kundanage and Oshuala reach that level. But right now, KC's at that level. Like, I think their attack is, you don't know where it's coming from. And I think that's what separates Temo Chewinga is like, she can find you. She's not just head down, go, go, go. Like, if she sees something, she's got the touch and the vision to make you pay, and I think like Bia, obviously, we've already seen that story. So just having both of those players that could score and play make at that level is just, they're a little bit of a cut above right now. I think I feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair to say. And I think Bethune, because of the learning curve, we'll have to see at the end of the season. Might be interesting to see where we put Bethune and Rodman at the end of the year too. But I think I have to agree with you. I mean, Bia and Chewinga, that is a nightmare for everybody else. Thus, the name of the tier. I can hear sweat trickling down your cheek. You got to feel that way if you're an opposing keeper. You feel that way if you're an opposing fullback, for sure.
Imagine the dread of just seeing Temo Chewinga run by you. I mean, it's be awful.
Yeah. And I mean, and then when she's past you, and I know this feeling well as somebody who played high school sports, is like when somebody is just faster than you and you're trying to keep up with them, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not catching up. I'm not going to get there.
They're just running away from you while they're dribbling. No biggie.
Yeah, sure.
So love the tiers. I think, we're off to a flying start. Excited to see where we take it this season. So shout out to you for putting it together and staying mad current. We've got the classics. We've got, some of the new, I don't even know where kids are finding music these days, but wherever they're finding it, you're also finding it there. And now we're turning them into tiers. So shout out to us. Shout out to you. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
I think that's it. I do want to say to dudes everywhere who have ever mocked anybody for watching reality TV or caring about Taylor Swift or anything like that, look at the way we behave when J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar and Drake all write poems about each other. Maybe we could ease up on the judgment of people for liking these kind of reality TV shows and something like that.
I love it. I'm a big reality TV show guy. Getting ready for some Bachelor in Paradise coming up and going. We'll see. We'll keep an eye out for that.
Let's go.
All right, man. I think we did it. This has been another episode of Into the Channel. We will be back later this week to preview the Champions League semifinals and take a look at how those teams are performing domestically. Each of them has played at least a couple matches since we saw them last in the Champions League. So we'll see what they're looking like. Do a little mini preview for what's going to be going down Saturday when those 4 teams lock up again. And then we'll be back next week with some more NWSL. Excited about that. Thank you for watching, listening, liking, subscribing, just plain hanging out. But most importantly, thank you for all your comments. Everyone who chimed in, especially about our USWNT Olympic roster draft. Every single one of you make our Into the Channel final roster. We're thrilled to have you on board. But in all seriousness, you make us better. You make the show better. You educate us. You clearly know your shit, most of you, because I learn things pretty much every single day reading all of the various takes and viewpoints. So thank you for that. And big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Grant Engel, for being our resident tiers guy. I'm the resident machinations guy. He's our resident tiers guy. Very important role here at the pod. So thank you. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, of course, buddy. I appreciate the kind words. And, it's never beef with the listeners and the viewers. I'm glad you point out. The comments were incredible. You guys know ball. It's never beef with you guys. I just want to quote, again, I talked about Chris Wallace, the Notorious B.I.G., for my money, possibly one of the greatest American writers of all time. I just want to finish the line where he says, I can hear sweat trickling down your cheek. Your heartbeat sounds like Sasquatch feet, thundering, shaking the concrete. Come on now. You don't get a lot better than that. I love the description, but there's one thing we are never, ever about here at the ITC, and it's about being scared. To quote another great poet, we ain't never scared. So we will see you guys at the next episode.